Hello, and this is my second in the line of my talks about my life as a person who dove into substance abuse at an early age and talking about depression. For me, they go hand in hand. It doesn't always go that way. Um, I identify with many people who are very similar to me that I see in the celebrity spotlight. Um, Bob Probert was definitely one. At my age of 21 and his age of 17, he lost his father, a Windsor cop, on my 21st birthday. For me, when he was drafted, the thing that really made me happy was the general manager compared him to Clark Gillies. I always loved the way Clark Gillies played because he played such a tough, physical game. Something in my youth the Wings had lacked, the Red Wings had lacked. And he became my favorite player. It took him a few years to come up. Back then, there was not the internet age, so we couldn't figure out why it was taking him so long, though every report was great. Come to find out some years later that he had had a drinking problem. I had never known anyone with a serious drinking problem, although I was developing one at the time Bob was drafted, which was in some ways very ironic. About 6 or 7 years down the road, my alcoholism had become problematic, and I had talked to a friend and thought, what do you think? I didn't ask my family because my mom and my stepdad had always given me such a hard time, and I didn't understand why. And it was me being naive or thinking I was owed something that caused me to behave horribly. And so this friend who had mentored me in my job and kind of helped me develop a really good work ethic, his name is Rick Chamberlain. I've lost touch with him over the years. This was half my life ago when I was about 26, and 26 or 27, and about the same time my sister had gotten married, and I had gone to the reception, and I had absolutely gotten blasted. I passed out. I was an embarrassment. I'm disgusted to think of how selfish I was back in those days. When I decided to quit, I had a single beer. I'd never been out to Harpo's. I went up to Harpo's and had one beer, and I had it, and I'd been clean for 2 or 3 months, and I'm like going, and I woke up the next day and I didn't like it. So I was going along a couple of days, and, I went back to my routine of not drinking, working myself into sobriety, and then an article was written in the Detroit Free Press by Mitch Albom. It's actually on his website. It was the first interview that I know Bob had done with anyone in the Detroit media. And the article, although it doesn't strike a chord with me now, I'm very fond of it because it gave me inspiration to try to do what someone I considered my hero a chance to do. And it may seem odd that I call someone 4 years younger than me my hero, but I lost my dad at age 7. And in small ways, certain family members tried to fill the void, but my dad was my best friend. We did a lot of things together, and in the short time I had him, the last few years, we did a lot of things together. I did more things with my dad. I didn't really have friends. We had moved a few times. So when I lost him, it was hard. And then it was doubly hard when I tried to go to the funeral home. Family members told me I wasn't allowed to go. And at that point, I think I felt very alone. No one understood how much seeing my dad meant. My dad died on Valentine's Day. That same week, my mom was my mom's birthday, and I believe, though I'm not sure, was their anniversary. So that week was just devastating to my mom. And I've tried to get her to talk to me about his death, find out a little bit about his personality, other than the bits and pieces I remember. And in 45 years, I haven't gotten much. All I know is that I love him, and family. My mom says you need to stop thinking about him, and to me, he's my dad. I love him. He worked with me, learned to read and spell, and I became very proficient at these things at a very young age. And I understood words that a lot of kids didn't understand at my age, so I was kind of a nerd. And it was hard. When we got ready to, my mom asked us what we wanted to do. We lived in Penn, and she said, "Do you want to move back to Garden City where we were, or do you want to stay here?" And me and my sister both wanted to move back to Garden City to be near family. When we went to my dad's office, my mom went up and got the last of my things, and we were parked out in front of the building, and there's a jewelry store that was right next door to the department store. And she had left the car running, and the radio was playing, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. Chicago's "Does Anybody Really Know What Time It Is" was playing. And "Does Anybody Really Care?" And at that point, I was sad, depressed. I think it may have pushed me that way, further along. And I was angry when the funeral happened. They wanting to go, and it took 2 or 3 adults to keep me from getting into the car to go. I wanted to go so badly. No one understood, and no one really stepped in. At about 10 or 11 years old, they tried to get me involved in sports. I did a little bit of Little League. I wasn't really a good athlete, but I tried. I became enamored with hockey because my uncles knew some of the older Red Wings, and they had gotten me a hockey stick signed by a lot of the Red Wing greats. I also loved the Tigers because Jim Northrup was a guy who was a friend of my dad at Elma College when he went there. It's just, there was a lot of things going on in my head, and I had no one to talk to, no one to understand, and when I tried to explain, it seemed like I was talking another language. I always knew something was wrong. I couldn't figure it out. I started making friends with a guy around the corner who also did not have his dad. He had a stepdad. And we tended to, every now and then, drink. My mom started seeing a guy who was an alcoholic, so it became easier for me to sneak beer. And occasionally she would let me have a sip, and it became acceptable to me. And I started down a path of drinking that was painful. My social development, even today, is retarded. It's set back. It's repressed. I like people. I like to be friendly. But I need time to warm up to people. I was teased greatly when we moved back to Garden City. We had some kids that were bullies, and I didn't have really anyone to kind of stand up for me. One time, and I will never remember who the kid was, but he teased me about my dad. I said, my dad's dead. He goes, it doesn't really matter. Well, that was devastating. That was really hard. The kid, I think, was, surprisingly enough, his brother was involved in the accident with Vladimir Konstantinov, Sergei Monatsikana, and Slava Batista. Two of those who I met, Slava Batista and Sergei Monatsikana. And just a variety of teasing that I did not have an adult figure to help me get through it. And I thought that's the way everybody was, and I became that way and treated people poorly. Teased people, said things that were just not right. Just, you know, it was teasing, but it was mean. It was on the edge of being mean-spirited, and that wasn't me, but I was hurting. I had my grief. I was starting to develop into it. And I had the seeds planted to become an alcoholic. And at that point, things just didn't get better. They just kept kind of going along. And my next installment will be where I go from there. I thank anyone who is watching this and may have a similar problem, and it helps them.